Hello again, everybody. Welcome to our Super Bowl Sunday kickoff show here at Review and Preview Sports. My name is Tom Scavetta, joined alongside by once again the one, the only good buddy of mine, Amine Kasawi. Amine, digging the facial hair. How's it going?
Doing well, man. Yeah, I went with the evil goatee.
So happy to have you here. Definitely excited to chop this up here today. Talk about each of these two teams and sort of dive into the history of the Super Bowl with you a little bit. Being played in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is the 11th time that the Super Bowl is being played in New Orleans. This city has hosted the most Super Bowls, now tied with Miami, Florida. And specifically, this is the same site that one of the college football playoff games took place at, Notre Dame and Georgia. So definitely a hot spot for these teams, digging up that Mardi Gras. I believe we're around Mardi Gras season, no?
Yeah. That
Tuesday.
Right around it.
Nice. So maybe the winner will maybe stick around to check that out before they get back to town for the parade. But quickly here, these teams met 2 years ago. We know the result. The Chiefs won 38-35, and they've since won another Super Bowl since then, right? They're looking for that three-peat now. They're 6-4 all time against the Eagles. They have the slight edge, and historically, the Chiefs have been better in the Super Bowl. They're 4-2 compared to the Eagles, who are only 1-3.
Yeah, absolutely. History is on the Chiefs side in that regard, especially when it comes to Super Bowl rematches. It's not technically a next year rematch, but other than Cowboys-Bills, who met back-to-back seasons, this is as close as we've ever gotten to a rematch other than that Bills-Cowboys situation. There were a couple other close ones like Brady and Manning, Eli, Giants-Patriots, 3 years in between. In the 70s, Cowboys-Steelers, there were 2 years in between. So we had a couple, but in all of those cases, the team that won the first one won the second one. The Giants, the Steelers, the Cowboys. So if you look at it from that point of view, history's on the Chiefs' side. Now, all that means nothing, of course, because the game has to be played on the field, and you never know what could happen. A bad injury could happen on the first play, and the game is turned upside down. So history is just there as a prerequisite. It's there, so it's something to look at, but we don't know what's going to happen. That being said, yeah, I look at the Andy Reid angle of this. As you mentioned, leading head coach in terms of wins for both franchises. He did it 2 years ago, and now he gets to do it again against his old team. And for the Chiefs, looking for the three-peat, there has not been a three-peat in major North American sports. That means NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, since Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant were teammates on the Lakers from 2000 to 2002. 23 years. There has never been that long of a gap between a three-peat in those four sports. So the Chiefs are battling for history. There's never been a Super Bowl three-peat. There have been two NFL championship three-peats, but it was the Packers in the 30s and in the 60s. The game was different. It wasn't the Super Bowl era. To me, if this happens, it really is a legit first, even though the NFL technically wouldn't consider it a first. And I look at the Eagles back in 2016, 17, 18. The Patriots went to 3 Super Bowls in a row. They won the bookends. But who stopped them in the middle from getting the three-peat? It was the Eagles. That is their one Super Bowl win. So they're looking to stop another team from getting to the three-peat. History is always good to look at. I love the historical slant, especially with the Super Bowl, where you got these legendary quarterbacks. It's the in terms of quarterback rematches, Hurts and Mahomes. That's another one where we've had quarterback rematches. The guy who wins the first one wins the second one, always. So Hurts is battling that as well. But he's got the best player on the field is Saquon Barkley. No matter what you think of Mahomes this season, of all the guys on the field, if you're going to say who's the best player, it's Barkley. So the Eagles have that. If you said who's the best defense, it's the Eagles by far. The Chiefs have a good defense, but they've been winning this season by the skin of their teeth week in and week out. So I think we're in store for a classic Super Bowl here. It's going to be one of the best ever.
Phenomenal. I'm excited. I'm really excited for it. Also, the age gap between these head coaches, 23 years. Nick Sirianni, a young buck compared to Andy Reid. Second longest age gap between head coaches in Super Bowl history, tied for 2 years ago when these two head coaches met. It's been a long road for the Eagles. Look, they started the year 2-2. They've lost one game since. There were rumblings for Sirianni to get fired. Pretty much 90% of Eagles fans were guaranteeing he would get fired at some point in the season, and it did not happen. So let's scout these Philadelphia Eagles and how they can stop the Kansas City three-peat and their road to Super Bowl 59. First off, they beat the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round, the same team that they beat in week 1. They beat them twice this year. They also beat the Rams twice this year, including in the NFC divisional round. And then they won the rubber match against the Washington Commanders. And I mean, most importantly, when I scout this team, what I look for in championship teams, can you run the football well and can you defend well? Because defense does win championships, in my personal opinion, still in 2025. The Eagles have the number 1 rush offense in the league and the number 1 scoring defense. And who do they have running for them? Saquon Barkley, 2,005 rushing yards this season, first in the NFL. He had 3 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. And one crazy stat when I look at Philadelphia, they lead the NFL in rush attempts. They're last in pass attempts. However, this is what fools people. This is sort of fool's gold. Jalen Hurts has a 116 rate on play action passes, and the Chiefs, they allow a 113 rate on play action. So offensively, that's where the Eagles are this year. And defensively, the acquisitions of linebackers Zach Bond, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell, 2 rookies, 1 free agent, were critical to this defense, helping elevate them to, in my personal opinion, the number 1 defense in the National Football League under Vic Fangio.
Yeah, Vic Fangio is another guy you got to mention as a new acquisition. Who knows if he'll last beyond this year with the way he has built up this defense. He could get scooped up by another team easily if they pay him enough. Look, the Eagles' defense has been incredible. You think about a couple of years ago, they go to the Super Bowl, they lose by 3 on a very, very bogus last-second interference call, which took away their opportunity to have a drive. So basically the refs let the Chiefs kick it with 2 seconds left. Last season, they start 11-1. They're on fire. And then Sirianni makes these interesting, at the time, crazy choices. Let's go of all his coordinators, and the team falls apart at the end, loses 6 out of 7. They're 1 and done in the playoffs. They come back this year, and again, they start out hot, but this year they don't fall apart. They basically maintain what they started as, and obviously those acquisitions, to have 2 rookies on the outside playing as well as they are, it reminds me of the 07 Giants back in the day when they had super young guys, Corey Webster, and I forget who the other one was.
Aaron Ross.
Exactly. Like, not names that you might remember today unless you're a Giants fan, but at the time you were like, wow, these young guys are really playing hard. And Webster made a game-sealing interception in the NFC Championship game over Brett Favre, which won the game, basically. So you see these young guys playing their butts off. You see Saquon, and man, everyone talks about Saquon, and rightly so, but we are witnessing one of the greatest offensive lines in the history of the NFL. They are the heaviest offensive line in Super Bowl history. So they've got the meat. They're going to be, and of course, they're going to have to play well because blocking the likes of Chris Jones, it ain't easy. And Chris Jones, one of the best players, defensive players ever, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I heard people the other day on TV talking about he needs to win this game to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. No, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer already. So the Chiefs are going to bring the pressure sporadically because that's what we know Spagnuolo does. He's not going to attack that offensive line nonstop throughout the game. He's going to pick his moments. And I think that's going to be the chess match here. Do they let Saquon sort of, have a bit of a day early on? Because this is going to be a high-scoring Super Bowl. This isn't going to be a 20-17 game. Their first game a couple of years ago, 38-35, like huge score, one of the highest-scoring Super Bowls ever. So for the Eagles, defensively, You got to stop Mahomes on the, and can he exploit those young guys or not? I don't know. Thus far in the playoffs, they've allowed a good amount of yards to Stafford and stuff, but they haven't had the back-breaking plays. And with Mahomes, that's what he does well. It's that 3rd and 8, and you think you're going to stop him and you're going to get the ball back, and then he gets 11 or 9, and boom, all of a sudden the Chiefs have all the momentum going for them. I think the Chiefs are sort of quietly confident that they could handle the defensive line of the Eagles, but I'm not convinced yet. But just hearing them talk on Super Bowl media days and stuff, it has been interesting. They seem very confident, but I don't know. I think the Eagles defense is ready for this challenge. And when you lose to a team, to get back to play them again, there is that sense of, all right, it's our turn now. It hasn't worked for the Bills. It hasn't worked for the Ravens. Can it work for this Eagles team?
Yeah, and look, when I look at the Eagles, they're scary big. You mentioned their offensive line. They have an average height of 6'6", an average weight of 337.5 pounds. That includes Jordan Mailata's 365 and Mekhi Becton's 363. They're humongous. The Chiefs, not as big, 6'5", 311.8 pounds. Yes, I did the vitals on that. But speaking of the Chiefs, let's scout them a little bit here. They had the first round bye. Their road, not easy, but they played one less game to get here. They beat the Texans at home, and then they beat the Bills at home. Once again, they did not control the game, but they controlled the moments, the big moments of the game. A lot of people are talking about the refs. We'll touch upon that in a little bit. But the bottom line is the Chiefs offense finally got over the hump and scored over 30 points in a game this season. And Mahomes is now playing for his 5th Super Bowl in 6 years. And this is with a supporting cast of an aging Travis Kelce, a banged-up Isaiah Pacheco, who missed majority of the season, where they signed Kareem Hunt off the street. They lost their left tackle. They had to kick out Joe Thuney there from guard. Xavier Worthy's a rookie. Rashee Rice, we know his off-the-field stuff. D-Hop was out for a while. Hollywood Brown, too. So there's a lot of moving parts in this Chiefs offense this year, and yet they were still able to get here to this point. They did not look like the typical Kansas City Chiefs on the field this year on film, but they won football games. They lost 2 games, really won all season, if you take away Week 18. And then you got to consider, too, that defense with Steve Spagnuolo. They're the real reason why they're here, in my opinion.
No question.
Quarterback play in the AFC is at an all-time high right now as far as the top few. I think after that it falls off. It's not as good as it once was, but the top few is just phenomenal, where you got your Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons, Joe Burrows, and your Patrick Mahomes. Those 4 have been phenomenal. And that defense is really what separates them at this point from those other teams. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on Kansas City before we get into like keys of the game and stuff. But I agree with everything you've said so far, Amine, and I'm super stoked to talk about this one.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm excited for this game. It's going to be, the Super Bowls have been decided by 3 points each of the last 3 years. So I can't imagine this one's going to be much different.
Absolutely. Also, quick storyline here, too. Kellen Moore projected to take the Saints head coaching job, likely his final game as Eagles offensive coordinator. So you definitely want to win this game for him on his way out. Fox game, Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. Tom Brady will be on the call with Kevin Burkhardt. Bit long road for him. Former Mets sideline reporter, gets the call play-by-play for his 2nd Super Bowl now. The Chiefs will be wearing white. The Eagles will be wearing green, I believe. And the team wearing white has won 16 out of the last 20 Super Bowls. That's an omen, I hope. I don't know, but the Chiefs wore red last year and still won. So they sort of went against that history there for a moment. And then we have, I don't know if you saw, we have Kendrick Lamar and SZA performing the halftime show this year. I believe Lamar was involved a few years ago. I think it was when the Rams played the Bengals, I want to say. he was
Possible.
part of that halftime show. He wasn't like the main star, but he was in it. So I'm excited. Should be fun.
Yeah, I usually miss the halftime show. That's when I
Yeah.
go get some food or or something.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as keys to the game, what maybe 2 or 3 things that really stick out to you for each of these teams in order to win Super Bowl 59? What are you looking at?
Number one, without a doubt, when I look at Mahomes and Brady, guys like that who are great often and in the big game, when they lose, it's when you pressure them. Period. Brady's 3 Super Bowl losses, he played well. He actually played well in those 3 games. 500 yards against the Eagles. Gave the ball to his defense with the lead both times against the Giants with 3 minutes left. The issue was he was running for his life all day, so he couldn't build a lead. Mahomes, the only Super Bowl he's lost against the Buccaneers in 2020, he was running the whole entire night. He made some insane throws where he was literally falling parallel to the ground and slinging it. That's the way you get Mahomes in trouble. You make him run for his life. The Eagles have got to get to him. They cannot let him stand in the pocket and make plays. They cannot give him time to survey and then run. They cannot let him do the run pass option and tear them up with either him or Hunt on the ground. That's the number one factor for the Eagles here. Make Mahomes struggle. Make it so that he's not comfortable. Last year was a close game against the Niners, but he wasn't in trouble at all. It was just that the Niners, held the receivers and the tight ends in check, but he was not being hassled. If you hassle him, you give yourself a great chance to win. So that's number one for me. Number two, you've got to score a lot of points. And I know this team could do it. They've done it all year. Eagles, I'm talking about, because the Chiefs, are going to score. The Chiefs not scoring 20 points would be like, this is a joke. You couldn't even imagine that. You imagine 30 is almost like the over-under for them. So if you're the Eagles, you got to put points on the board. Touchdown points. Field goals, in the beginning, early stages, yeah, you can settle. But if you're Sirianni, you're playing against a team going for a three-peat, one of the greatest coaches, greatest quarterbacks, greatest tight ends, greatest defensive coordinators. This is not the game to settle. There's going to be a lot of go for it on fourth downs in this game, I'm assuming. A lot, more than maybe any other Super Bowl we've seen. Because you can't allow yourself to put 3 points on the board and let Mahomes put 7 with regularity. You're going to lose that game. So those are the 2 things that immediately pop into my head. And then you got to sort of make Kelsey's life miserable. If Kelsey's remember last year against the Niners, he had a bad game. And I remember in the third quarter, he goes up to Andy Reid and bumps him and he's acting all crazy. Get into these Chiefs players' heads. The Chiefs have all the pressure on them. If the Chiefs have a big lead at halftime, they're winning. There's no doubt about it. They're not going to blow this. But if you can put them in the sense of, oh my God, we thought this was predetermined, and then all of a sudden they can feel like maybe it's not happening for them. It's getting closer to the end, and if the Eagles can play with a big lead for the majority of this game and get to the fourth quarter, man, those Chief butts are going to get tight. So those are some of the main things I'm looking for. Make Mahomes fight for his life, put a lot of points on the board, go for it on fourth down. This is 4th and 9 at the 30, go for it. Like you're the opponent 30, go for it. It's not worth putting 3 points on the board and getting to the heads of some of those receivers. And then, Jalen Hurts, I believe in Jalen Hurts, and then see what he can do. He can't be turning the ball over. That's another thing.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of keys to this game for me. First and foremost, Saquon Barkley against the Chiefs run defense. Chiefs have the second best run defense in the NFL. Saquon has rushed for 100 plus in 8 of his last 9 games, 3 rushing touchdowns 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs team that they only allow under 4 yards per carry 2 running backs on the season. So that also sort of ties into the Eagles O-line against KC's front 4. Look, the way I look at it, I'm not that big of a Jalen Hurts believer in big games. I think he's an average to above average quarterback. Um, I don't think he's this dog water type of QB. I think he can make plays when he has time.
Mm,
Um, he struggled under pressure all year long. And when I look at Spags, he dialed back on blitzes against Josh Allen. So you have to find a way to contain Saquon Barkley. And by contain, I'm talking about hold him to 70, 80 yards. If you can keep him under 100 rushing yards, I think the Chiefs have a good chance to win this game. So that's key number one. Key number two, yeah, you mentioned it before, pressuring Patrick Mahomes. Um, I'm looking specifically matchups interior wise, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith against Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. Carter with 4.5 sacks on the year, but his pressures are out the door. And then Milton Williams, impending free agent, he's going to have a big game. And, with Tooney moving to left tackle, Mike Caliendo has to come in and play left guard. And his stats against the Bills, they weren't good. He allowed 1 sack and 10 pressures against Buffalo. And that's an interior that has Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. I think Philadelphia's interior is superior to that. And for Mahomes, his rate dipped 20 plus points against pressure this season. And this is an Eagles defense, a Vic Fangio defense that relies on the front four. They don't like to blitz a whole lot either. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at Joe Tooney against Josh Sweat with 8 sacks. Jawan Taylor, who allowed 7 sacks this season at right tackle. I think he's the weak link on that offensive line. Going up against Nolan Smith, who had 6.5 sacks this year. It's going to be very, very exciting to see. Then on the other end, obviously you got to pressure Jalen Hurts as well because he's got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. If you remember 2 years in the Super Bowl, Devontae Smith had over 100 yards.
yep.
He has 4 catches exactly in each playoff game. You want to hold him to that or fewer. A.J. Brown finally got going in the NFC Championship game. He's a consistent 1,000-yard guy, 7-8 touchdowns a year. And the Chiefs secondary, they're not superstaric outside of Trent McDuffie. That's not even a word. But Justin Reed and Brian Cook, those safeties really need to be stout, in my personal opinion. You want to keep everything in front of you, and Philadelphia has done a lot of dinking down the field and dunking to tight end Dallas Goedert throughout the whole postseason thus far. I don't think Hurts is 100% still, if I'm being honest with you. Goddard had 7 catches for 85 yards against the Commanders, and the Chiefs allow 100-plus rating to tight ends. So I think Dallas Goedert is due for a big game. I think he's going to catch 4 or 5 balls for 60-plus yards. I think that'll be huge. One huge matchup, too, the Eagles O-line. I know I touched upon it before, but specifically these two matchups, Jordan Mailata on one side only allowed 2 sacks all year. But the number one matchup in this game is Lane Johnson against George Karlaftis. Karlaftis had 8 sacks this season, 3 in the playoffs thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe all 3 of his sacks came against Houston. And Lane Johnson allowed 0 sacks this season. He, in my opinion, is the best right tackle in the National Football League, even over Penei Sewell still. And yeah, look, I think the Chiefs front four, they're in for a tough go against this Eagles offensive line. Tershawn Wharton's been great this year, 6.5 sacks to pair interior-wise with Chris Jones. They held Josh Allen to just 2 for 5 on QB sneaks. So whatever recipe they dialed up there, they'll have to do that against Jalen Hurts as well because he had 3 touchdowns on the ground last week or 2 weeks ago against Washington. So, yeah, all in all, I think those are my 4 keys of the game. Amine, I think that's what we really got to look out for.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And then let's get into our players to watch. I'm sure we have a lot, but it doesn't have to be the best players. Who do you think has a major impact on this game? We'll start with you. Since it's the Super Bowl, we can do like 3 for each team. I think that's fair.
All right. Well, for the Chiefs, you got to go Mahomes. Obviously, it's good. I'm thinking of who can be a receiver who can come out of nowhere. And I look at DeAndre Hopkins, who's like a legend, pretty legendary player. Never had a big moment in the playoffs. This is his first year with the Chiefs, first Super Bowl. Can he maybe break out, like, and have one of his old school DeAndre Hopkins, Cardinals or Texan days type of performance? Can he do something like that and really surprise us? Because the Chiefs, they don't have the weapons that they have. They've been winning these Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill, which is amazing. He leaves and then they go on this amazing run. Can he maybe show up and do something special? And then this one might surprise you, but Harrison Butker, I think he made 3 50-yard field goals in last year's Super Bowl, which is a lot of 50-yard field goals, and the pressure is on. And he was injured earlier this season. Can he, if you're Andy Reid and you trust him from 50 yards out to kick it, you can't imagine. The Chiefs more times than likely will be in that range. And it's, hey, do we go for it? Do we punt it, or do we go for the fourth down? Maybe they're just going to kick it a bunch, because if they have the lead, if their defense is holding the Eagles in check, Butker's leg is maybe the strongest in the NFL right now. And he had the offseason and drama stuff that he's also sort of gotten behind. So let's see if he can have a big day as a kicker. You never expect the kicker to do it. But last year, without the kicker, they don't win that game against the Niners, because I believe he made 4 in total. I think they had 31 points and 4 field goals, and obviously the extra points. So he was their leading scorer points-wise. So look out for him as a sort of wild card name to look at. And then for the Eagles, you mentioned Johnson. That's definitely one I would mention. If he can keep that donut number there, and not allow anyone to get by him, that's going to bode well for Jalen Hurts. You can't not mention Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's a quarterback league, and the quarterback is the guy who makes the engine drive. So Hurts had an incredible game in the last Super Bowl. Can he have another one? He's got the record for most rushing touchdowns in Super Bowl history by a quarterback in that one game. So can he do something like that? You imagine we'll see a couple of tush pushes. So Jalen Hurts. And then I'm looking at Jalen Carter, who you mentioned earlier. He won the game against the Rams. The Rams were driving to win, and they had, I think, a 3rd and 1, and he made it a 4th and 10 because of a sack. Basically, game over. Blew up the line. If he can have that kind of day against the Chiefs line and make Mahomes, know he's there all night long, that's another X factor player I would look out for.
All excellent picks. Amine, I definitely agree. I guess for Kansas City, I want to go a little bit differently as far as who I think is going to have an impact on this game. I think Xavier Worthy is going to be a guy that does a lot of damage. And it's tough, right? Because he likes to move around a lot pre-snap, and you have Cooper DeJean, who can play outside, but he's primarily a slot guy. And then you have Slay and Quinyon Mitchell on the outside. So, this Chiefs receiving core is going to have their hands full. They have only turned the ball over once in their last 9 games. The Eagles defense, 20 takeaways in their last 6 games. They forced 4 Washington Commander turnovers last week against a quarterback named Jaden Daniels. That's a big problem. So I don't know if Worthy's going to be getting Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, or Darius Slay, whoever it is. He's a problem. 5+ receptions in his last 6 games, 3 touchdowns over his last 4. And in the playoffs, he's been remarkable. So I'm definitely excited. He takes a lot of pressure off of Travis Kelce, right? The Chiefs are really looking for that guy. We thought it was going to be Rashee Rice this year. He went down. Hopefully when he comes back next year, him and Worthy can sort of be that next 1-2 punch, and Kelce can sort of take a back seat to those guys. Even though Kelce torched the Eagles 2 years ago. I think he had like 80+ receiving yards in that game. He was solid. It always helps when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes throwing to you. He hasn't thrown a pick since November 17th. He's been great. So I think Worthy will able to get the ball from him, and he'll have a big impact on this game. Second player to watch is Trent McDuffie, young corner for Washington. I just think he is really going to have his hands full against A.J. Brown. I think he's going to do a good job. He's shut down and he's blanketed a lot of opposing ones this year in the NFL, and he does a really good job at not committing penalties either. And then third is Karlaftis, 3 sacks against the Texans. I want to see what he can do against Lane Johnson because there may not be that many pass rushing opportunities in this game. It depends if Philadelphia can stay ahead of the sticks. That's why the game for me is won in the trenches. If you can get into third and long, second and long, George Karlaftis can be a huge factor in this game, despite Lane Johnson not having allowed any sacks this year. I think if Karlaftis can get pressure, it could open up the middle for guys like Chris Jones and Treshaun Wharton to get sacks. So I think that could be huge. For Philadelphia, Saquon, look at his numbers in the playoffs. I mean, this is remarkable. 119 yards against the Packers, 205 and 2 scores against the Rams, 118 and 3 scores against the Commanders. That's a 3-game window for a whopping 442 rush yards and 5 touchdowns in 3 games. In 3 games. Good luck, Kansas City and Steve Spagnuolo. Defensively, I like Zach Bond in this game for Philadelphia. Huge free agent acquisition for the year, over 150 tackles, 5 forced fumbles, and 3.5 sacks. He's a really good piece. Remember, they lost Nakobe Dean, so not having him is huge. I think Zach Bond has 2 major boxes he needs to check in this game. One, you have to spy Mahomes. The Bills did not do a good job of that. That's a big part of the reason why the Chiefs won that game. And the Eagles allow 4.8 yards per carry to opposing QBs, and that's typically Nakobe Dean's job. So you want to rely on your front, right? Stop Kareem Hunt. Stop Isaiah Pacheco. They're good at stopping the run, but can you stop Patrick Mahomes as well? That's the next element that this Kansas City offense brings. Will Matt Nagy be able to exploit that? So I think it's a big factor for Zach Bond. And I hate to bring up some negative history for Philadelphia, although I do because I'm a Giants fan. The guy filling in for Nakobe Dean is Oren Burks. If you remember Oren Burks, he was the guy who stepped in for Dre Greenlaw in last year's Super Bowl when Greenlaw went down with his injury. Oren Burks played for the 49ers and got torched when Greenlaw left the game. So that is a huge, huge storyline. And then you went with Lane Johnson. I agree. But just to add one other guy in the mix here, Cam Jurgens for Philadelphia. He is taking over at center for Jason Kelce this season, post-retirement. And quite frankly, I think Cam Jurgens has done a fine job moving from right guard to center. He's one of the better centers in the NFL. Banged up and limited a little bit against the Commanders. They weren't sure if he was going to start. So all in all, I mean, I think – you could argue so many different players to watch. You got to watch everybody, but these are the guys that Amine and I really think you should be keying in on Super Bowl Sunday. And there we go. If I remember correctly, there were really no injuries of note, right, heading into this week. I know Jalen Carter's battling an illness, but other than that, I think everyone's pretty healthy.
No, yeah, everyone's pretty healthy altogether.
And I'm hearing Brandon Graham might play in his final NFL game.
Yeah.
So good for him, trying to come off IR and give it one last go with that elbow injury. So definitely awesome stuff. Also, Britton Covey's practicing in full as well. Good sign for the Eagles and their return man. All right. It's that time. We've pretty much dialed this up, I think, really well, I mean, for the last 30 minutes or so. We've gone into offensive players, defensive players, coaches, storylines, history, law of gravity, whatever you want to call it. Who is winning this game? What is your final score? And who wins Super Bowl MVP?
So you got an all-time great quarterback against the number 1 defense in the league. That has happened 6 times in a Super Bowl. Only one of those times did the quarterback come out successful. And the quarterback that came out successful was Tom Brady in 2014 against the Legion of Boom Seahawks. Usually, it's the defense that comes out on top. And the Eagles' defense is strong. They're stout. They're nasty. I feel sort of like I'm in a head and heart battle right now in terms of making a pick for this game, because I think the Eagles are going to win the game. That's like my brain. I look at the numbers, the players, man for man. I see that the Eagles do what they do best and they come out on top. But then there's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and history on their side. And there's a part of me that looks at that and says, how can you pick against that? But I'm going to pick against that. I remember when the Commanders and Lions game happened, I had the same sneaking fish. I was like, I think the Commanders are going to win, but I picked the Lions wrongly only because I went with history. They were the higher seed. They were hot team, number one in the conference, blah, blah, blah. But I had a sneaking suspicion that it would be the Commanders who won, and they did win. So this time I'm going to go with what I sense. And I sense that the Eagles are the better team. And I think they're going to put the L on the Chiefs' head. I see them winning this game, very close game all the way through. Nothing. I don't think this game ever gets outside of maybe a 10-point lead by either side. But I see the Eagles kind of having the lead and maintaining it. What we've seen in these Mahomes Super Bowls, every single Super Bowl he's won, he's overcome at least a 10-point deficit in all of them. Twice against the Niners and against these very Eagles 2 years ago. So I think they're going to be playing from behind, but I think for the first time, and forget about that Buck Super Bowl, they were getting smashed the whole way. So you kind of knew a comeback wasn't in the cards even in the third quarter of that one. This time I think there is going to be that suspicion that they can do it. But the same way the Eagles did in 2017, Graham, who was the hero of that game, Brady driving to win another Super Bowl, causes a turnover, game over. I think this time the Eagles do something similar. When Mahomes has the ball towards the end of the game, and they're going to come up with a big play, and they're going to stop the three-peat hopes of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles to win their second Super Bowl in franchise history by a score of 34-28. And I think the MVP is going to be, without a doubt, Saquon Barkley, who is going to have a monster day in the Super Bowl. I think he's going to be the third running back in NFL history to win a rushing title and a Super Bowl in the same season. Terrell Davis did it in 98, and Emmitt Smith did it 3 times with the Cowboys. So that's my pick.
All right. Much respect for that pick. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into this game. You have to weigh the meat and the potatoes here of the Eagles' offensive identity, and that is run the football and keep the Kansas City offense off the field. In ways, this reminds me of Super Bowl 25, back when the Giants played the Buffalo Bills. You had this awesome all-star quarterback in Jim Kelly who aired it out. And the Giants had this 2-man rush the entire game. 2 fellas by the name of Leonard Marshall and Eric Howard, and they got the job done. I think Philadelphia will be able to use a similar mindset here and try to work off of that. The game plan should be to keep Kansas City's offense off the field and shorten the game. But when you got a running back like Saquon Barkley with these outstanding runs and not knowing when he could take the top off a defense and blow it up, that could ruin these long, methodical drives. I think Spagnuolo's game plan may actually work against Kansas City Chiefs, where it will work against the Chiefs. It'll keep Philadelphia's offense on the field longer, and they'll just methodically move down the field. I'm looking at these linebackers like Leo Chenal, Nick Bolton. They will have huge assignments in this game. On the other hand, this young secondary, 2 rookies starting in this game, going up against Patrick Mahomes, it is definitely concerning because Mahomes can hurt you at any time and make you pay for it. And you know what they say, you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes, as Amine Kasawi just did. But there are 2 teams in recent memory that defy history, that defy that underdog status. It's the Philadelphia Eagles and it's the New York Football Giants. I look at this game, it has a very similar feel to the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay a few years ago. I'm not saying that's what the final score is going to be. Jawan Taylor is banged up with a knee. Joe Tooney is playing out of position. Mahomes is going to be rattled. This Commanders game 2 weeks ago was not even close, ladies and gentlemen. The Rams gave them the best run for their money. If the Chiefs are going to win this game, you better take a page out of Sean McVay's book. This pains me to say, and I don't want to agree with Amine here, but the Philadelphia Eagles will, and unfortunately, win the Super Bowl by a final score of 31-27. I'm going to go a little bit differently here with the MVP. I think Devontae Smith has the game of his life. He had 100-plus receiving yards in Super Bowl 57. I think the Chiefs are able to contain Saquon and keep him around that 90 to 110 rushing yard area, and Devontae Smith scores the game-winning touchdown on a play action in the red zone, and the Eagles will win their second Super Bowl in history. And as much as it pains me to say, this might be a pick of me trying to reverse jinx, because I am rooting for Kansas City in this game. I don't want to root for them. I don't want the Eagles to win a Super Bowl, though. I'm a Giants fan. It's hard, right? You're damned if you do. You're damned if you don't. Either the Chiefs wind up on Sunday with more championships than the Giants, or the Eagles win. And I'm also in denial. I don't want to see Saquon win MVP. I want him to play really well, but not enough to win MVP. But in all seriousness, Philadelphia is the better football team right now. They're better on both ends. Their defense, I think, is slightly better than Kansas City's, and that offensive line and running game could really hurt them. Where, I mean, I think you and I both agree, the quarterback matchup doesn't even matter as much if those game plans play out the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, like you said, I'm a Giants fan as well. I don't want I hate to pick the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, but especially since it'll be their second one since we've won one. But and their third appearance since we last won one. So hard times, but the NFC East, if the Eagles have been for so long the also ran of the conference. For so long, they were the only team without a Super Bowl. Now they'll have two if they pull this off, like you and I think they will. And then now at that point, it's like every team in the NFC East is pretty much on even footing historically. Cowboys would have 5, we'd have 4. The Commanders would have 3, and this would be 2 for the Eagles. They would definitely be able to set the big boy table if they pull this off, especially beating who they would beat.
Yeah, completely agree. It's been an awesome NFL season. I mean, it's been awesome doing 4 of these shows with you here throughout the course of the NFL postseason. It has absolutely been a pleasure working with you, and I hope you enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday.
Absolutely, my friend. Always a pleasure being on here with you. I went 10 for 12 so far. I've missed 2 games, so I'm looking to go 11 for 13 and have a nice solid, percentage here.
Absolutely. Folks, if you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Review and Preview Sports, where you can watch this video exclusively along with our other videos here on the brand. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and the Anchor if you like to listen to audio podcasts as well. On behalf of Amine Kasawi, I'm Tom Scavetta. We hope you all enjoy the big game on Sunday, and we will talk to you all very soon.